Have you got yours? We'll try and be loud anyway, because this room is beautiful but very echoey. Hi, so we today are going to be talking a bit about the role of young people in the international diplomatic process, and we hope this will be a little bit of levity, a little bit of energy, a little bit of dynamism to the program that we will try to bring. So first of all, I'm going to ask these two on stage, but I'd also like the whole audience to do this too. I'd like you to spend a moment thinking about what is it that brought you originally to working on climate change? Okay, now I'm going to come to you guys to answer first, but hold that all in your heads. Do you want to go first?
So when I think of climate change, the first thing that I think of is actually, for me, climate change was just about nature and living with nature. And the first person who probably told me about the importance of living with nature is actually my grandma. She's about 85 now. She lives back in Australia. She's a crazy Irish woman, but she's been my best friend and a mentor for my life. And I grew up in a small country town in Australia, about 2 hours driving inland from Brisbane, depending on how good your geography is of Australia on the east coast. And the town that I grew up in and where my grandparents live, there's about 1,000 people there, and it's a small farming community. So it's the kind of community where you grow up realising that the community and the economy is dependent to and tied in with nature from the very start. Because you see that when there's droughts and it doesn't rain, the whole community suffers. And you see that when it's really hot and there's dust storms, you can't go to school. And you see that when it's so dry that there's no drinking water, everyone, including the animals, also suffer. So I think living in a farming region taught me from the very start that we depend on nature. When I think about those early moments of when I understood that that was about the changing climate, it's my nana, and it's when she would tell me that, you know, oh, it's May, and I know we're on the other side of the hemisphere, so for us that's winter, and she would say to me, like, oh, we haven't had a frost yet, you know, things are changing. And it's those stories about nature and about nature changing that I think is when climate becomes just a conversation about the real things. And so for me, that's what I think about, is those early conversations with my grandma about her life in the community, what's changed to my life, and it's like real observations and lived experience.
I think for me, the climate change always was there in my life, with the hot waves, with the floods, with a real impact, because I'm from Brazil, from Latin America, so the impact always was there, but also was in the ancestrality about the relationship with the nature, and also the value of the people protecting the nature on the ground. And I think when I come for this space, beautiful place, to be honest, but it's like, we have a lot of space when the people are literally making the climate action. It is sometimes it's not considered in negotiations decisions, or considered in the people talk about climate action. And my question is always, why not? So the way I understand about climate change was with cultural practices, was with festivals, poetries, and round of conversations to protect one green park in my community, because I am from one peripheral, one urban context. So I didn't understand about the nature around me. It was not clear the relationship. But since one time you understand, you never forget everything around you is also nature. You can be inside concrete spaces, but one day that space also was nature. And someone make decisions about take off the trees, take off the rivers, and create this concept about economic development and sustainable development, but it's sustainable for who, when, and where. So for me, the climate change also is the impact we face like young people, is the environmental racism, is lived in our lives, is the misinformation, the negationism around us. But the most important thing is the reconnection, and I'm really happy to say I reconnect with the nature around me, and because of that, my family also reconnect, my community also reconnect, and now we have one green park in my neighborhood. So I think this is one great way to say about climate change and climate action. Sometimes need to be in the high level, but sometimes most part of the times, need to be in the local. It's there when the nature and the people are.
Yeah, it's so important, that relationship that we have with one another and how we bring climate into that. You know, we are the most trusted messengers to our friends and family. So if we experience it, it's so important to share that. You know, it's interesting to hear you because I'm now not youth, but I was a youth climate activist. And for me, I was privileged enough, I guess it's also where I come from, I'm from the UK, to learn about it at school. And when I learned about it at school, I was like, this is nuts. Like, this is totally unfair. I got taught there's some greenhouse gases, and then there's some, we'll fix it with some solar panels and some wind turbines. And I was like, what? Like, and then let's move on. Like, no, we have to focus. This makes no sense. But then this morning, I dropped my 1-year-old son off at his childminder, and I had to be sending them messages saying, this is the network for cool spaces in London. Because he, like you guys, will only ever live climate change. And I think that's something that's coming so much more into the political conversation now and has such power and such impact. So that brings us to the international process, which feels often very disconnected from these kind of lived experiences, this passion that comes from seeing the injustice in it. What do you think the international climate process gets right? Who wants to go first? Then we can talk about how it gets wrong, but first of all, I want to hear about what it gets right.
I think Marcele are both optimists, so I think this is good. We're happy to start with what's right, and I think you have to be an optimist in this space. But I think what it gets right is like the fact that Marcele and I get to have this opportunity this year in COP to work together, learn from each other. The fact that we've only known each other for 8 weeks in this formal multilateral process, but you know, when we talk about things like my grandma, or Marcele's park and her home region, it's like, I think let's not forget that beside all the noise that happens in the international spaces, like it's human to human, and we connect through the families, our connection to nature, and I think like for all the noise that is created about the failures in the broader system, like we're still here and we're friends and we get to connect over that and think about creating this moment together. So I think facilitating those connections is so powerful, and I think that's what this space can provide.
I like this. That's nice. I think also have one important conversation to all us do about what is the international cooperation and if our life will be better without UN, because a lot of people are talking about this. We don't trust, we don't want to be inside, we don't want to connect, but for many years was the infrastructure of the cooperation. So in your time to cooperate, everybody will say don't work anymore. In our time to be young persons, being climate activists and work in this system, don't have more space, don't have more funds, don't have, in your time. So I think also have one important conversation to understand what's the future we want and where this future we will build. Because it's absolutely fine if we create another systems, another spaces, another political way to understand the life. But if we say we are angry and don't do anything, at the same time, in the climate change crisis, have people dying. So I think this is not funny. We are not here just because we want to be away of our homes. We are here because we believe something has to happen. And to help this to happen, we can do in different ways, with cultural practices, with agriculture, can be with films, can be in high-level spaces, can be on the ground. We need to be creative. And just to finalize, I think if you close your eyes, please, one moment. Yes, close your eyes, I'm looking for you. I'm seeing if you're not close. If you close your eyes for one moment, I understand you can remember one person you love, or one food you love, or one place you love, and probably this person, food, or place is in danger now. So if you open your eyes and don't are uncomfortable with that, if the urgency to act, something is literally wrong with you. Because we need to be angry, we need to be uncomfortable, but also we need to be optimistic, not because of the system, but because of we need that. And we can do. Any change in the world happen without the people, without the political decisions. And that's the reason the international cooperation and also the UN system is important. to face the barrier of language, the barrier of the different cultures, and make the things happen. Maybe on the ground, neighborhoods, cities first, but we need to do something. We can't be stopped just looking and watching. The decisions make it without us. So I think that's the reason the PYCC role also is important. It's recently, but also it's a key message about youth participation in FCCC.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, people in rooms making decisions are just people in rooms like we're in now. We're just human beings trying to work out how we live on this planet together. And I think being together in that international moment can be just so unbelievably powerful. But it's not always perfect. I'm very proud of what the international system has achieved, but there are clearly some things it gets wrong. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your reflection on what do you think it doesn't get right yet, and what would you do differently so that it can improve?
I'll let Marcele start because I'm maybe still green and optimistic about all of this.
I think have some specific projects happen in many parts of the world with reforestation, with climate education, with technology, and have big ideas. I think I'm seeing reach from the Global Citizens Assembly. Global Citizens Assembly, for example, is one way to make a difference. We have the cultural global stock take connected with the formal aspect of the global stock take is another way to make the difference. We have a lot of children talking about nature and climate around the world. It is another way. So I think when we talk about what's wrong and what's right, don't have just one way to look for the political decisions. We need to be really creative and look around for people making decisions who make a difference today, now. And this difference needs to impact the life of, and the quality of the life for the people today and now. So I think this is the thing are wrong in the system. Don't have urgency, it's so much slow. But also connect everybody. We are in one London Climate Week with more than 100, 1,000 of events. This is people trying to be connected. This is not just because we came from here to face a hot wave together. It's because we believe be here together is important to create new ideas. And that's the part I think is going well. The people stay doing, the people stay trusting. If not, why we are in one room full of people?
The bit that I maybe would say I've seen not to be working so well is, so before stepping into this PYCC role and working with Marcele, like I wasn't, I suppose, as engaged in the UNFCCC space. My background is in agriculture and food, and so this UNFCCC specific climate space has been quite new to me. And in many ways, I felt like a huge imposter because everyone speaks in acronyms that I have no idea about.
You did just say PYCC.
Yeah, I know, listen to me.
You're clearly getting the bug.
I'm really drinking the Kool-Aid over here. But I think what I've found is there's actually a huge inaccessibility to be part of this space because of the way we talk in here. And one thing I think we don't quite get right is just recognise that the language that people are using on the ground in communities is still really powerful and right in their own context to describe climate change, and that there is a place for the technical language and processes that we have in the UNFCCC, but let's not underestimate the value and the power that exists in community language. And I think, you know, when I'm talking about that, I'm thinking of my regional community, the story about my grandma, but I'm also thinking of Indigenous communities and of the Pacific Island communities who speak about climate change and nature through song and stories. And I think that is also an immensely powerful mode that we have to help mobilize people towards action, because it's kind of cutting through the noise and it's getting straight to what do people believe in, what do they care about, what do they identify with. So that's the bit that I think we don't value enough in this space.
Yeah, and we need to bring that sort of lived, personal, and that stuff is so powerful. So I worked on COP26 and I was traveling around with Alok Sharma, and it was during the time where a lot of the street protests, sort of led by Greta and many, many others, and people were out there, and pretty much every single minister we spoke to, they would talk about their children and what their children were saying about climate change. And I think that sort of cultural language that comes into it. It's so powerful, it's so political. So I completely agree with you. We need space for those kind of conversations, and they do change minds, and they do become the anecdote that the minister tells or the decision maker tells, and we need to bring that with young people.
Yeah, and I think when I'm thinking ahead to COP31 this year in Antalya in Turkey, and if you listen to what Minister Kurum from Turkey is talking about, it's the COP for implementation and action. And when I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how are we going to actually move beyond saying it's about action, but really helping people to start taking action. And a lot of that for me is the kind of meeting people where they're at and not thinking of this action, this era of implementation as a top-down approach, but rather enabling communities to do the work that many of them are already doing, but to scale that and expand that in a way that works for their context. So I think that's what I'm really excited for us to bring. And I think the young people and the children are the best place to lead that process because we're the most connected to communities. We're digital natives, like we know how to connect innovatively and across boundaries. And I think that's the massive opportunity that exists in this COP31 for implementation. It's the moment for children and young people to be leaders in that space.
Yeah, I believe who built the system is the people, right? So when we are talking about changing, we are talking about capacity building, funding, space, and really pass the microphone for new voices and let their voices say what they need, what they understand. If they are in one indigenous communities, in one local community, in one periphery, in Australia, in Brazil, or in Turkey, they are feeling the consequence of climate change, so we need to really pass the microphone for them and make this systematization of information go for one place when this come back with public policies, with best climate decisions, with political elections, with everything. This is not impossible. And I think my really goal for this year with COP30 is stay doing one civil society participation process for youth inside the UNFCCC system, because probably the adults have so much to understand with our vision about everything, and we have so much to learn about the systems. With intergenerational dialogue, we create a new system for everybody. One system will respect the nature, will respect the cultures, will respect the people, and we will just not say sustainable development, but we'll say about ecology, about cosmovision, about different ways to understand the future, but with action in the present. So the climate action also is that, is remembering the final of the day always is about people we love, food we like, places we remember when we close our eyes. If the negotiators do that more, probably they don't will say no for phase out fossil fuels, or they don't will say no for triplication for finance for adaptation. They don't will say no for movements on the ground because they will remember. So if they forget, we need to remember them. We need to remember the decision makers about the importance of best climate decisions, not tomorrow, not in the another COP, in the another SB, in the another climate week, but today. Because our generation needs that. And also we are here to support with a lot of knowledge to share. So I think this is important.
I just want to add one other thing as well. Like when I look around this room today and some of the other rooms that I've been in this week and probably some of the spaces that you've all been in, like we're already on board. And I think what I think of is like who's not in this space. And for me, that's most of my community from regional Queensland who don't know these rooms exist or aren't part of these conversations. And so for us to really move to this era of implementation, getting stuff done, rebuilding public confidence and trust, we need to, all of us, go bring the other people from home, not into here, but just go bring them into the conversation about nature and about protecting the places we love. Not everyone has to understand this technical space. I think success is not that everyone goes to the COP or understands the language of the COP, but success is that we depoliticize these conversations. We talk about what we love, and all of you, homework, can you please go home and just start having those conversations with people who aren't here with you right now? Because I think that's when we can really build this coalition and this momentum of trust and action.
Thank you, and what a great note to end on, because we've talked so much about the importance of humanity, connection, the role of the international process to facilitate that, but also that we need to bring that humanity and connection into our own lives and where we start from. So I think that's an excellent piece of homework for everyone here. We will expect you to come back and tell us what you've heard, what your conversations have been like. Please go and talk to people about why you're passionate about climate change. And I'm going to ask you to start doing that when we are getting off the stage. You've got a little moment of transition. Please talk to the person next to you about why you started working on climate change in the first place, because I am sure it starts with something that you love. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.